Hello guys, welcome to my new video, and today I'll be doing a Mistweaver guide video for raids and 5-mans. In this video we'll be talking about things like the best talents, the stat priority for raids and 5-mans, the Azerite gear that's really great for Mistweaver, specific Battle of Dazar'alor Azerite gear, and specific Monk Azerite gear as well. We'll be talking about the gameplay at the very end in terms of 5-mans and raids and how to optimally play your Mistweaver Monk. So first of all, we'll be looking at the raid talents for a raiding monk, and this talent build that I have here is probably going to represent 90% of Mistweaver monks doing mythic content, heroic content, or any raid content in the game right now, with Chi Burst being very strong in raid situations, Chi Torpedo being used for majority of the content. Now Tiger's Lust can be very strong for certain fights like Blockade, where you might be scared about rolling off the ship, so Tiger's Lust is very strong there. And also on King Rastakhan, if you're doing mythic content and you have to heal the tanks, you know the tanks have to do a swap and they have to run quite a lot. And if you have immobile tanks, using Tiger's Lust speed bonus on your, let's say, Guardian Druid or things like that can really help them out on these kind of encounters. But generally Chi Torpedo is very strong as well in terms of tier 45. In terms of the mana talents, Mana Tea is probably the most convenient to use. It provides a good mana reduction on 1.5 minute cooldown, which bodes well in Battle of Dazar'alor, because every 1.5 minute is probably going to be a lot of burst healing required. And in previous videos I've talked about how to really optimize Mana Tea, where before you're going to be using Mana Tea, you want to make sure your renewing mists are out there. And when you use Mana Tea, you want to spam your Vivifies, and at the very last second you want to use your Essence Font, because you don't want to use Essence Font at the start of Mana Tea, because Essence Font has a long cast time and you don't want to be locked out of using other spells. But we'll talk about that a bit later on. There is a couple of other talents that also could be used, like Life Cycles was very popular in Uldir, especially for Mythic Fetid Devour, where there's a lot of tank healing, where you'll be using Enveloping Mist into Vivifies, Vivifies into Enveloping Mist, and it was working really well with Life Cycles. But overall, I think majority of people will be going with Mana Tea because it's convenient, and Spirit of the Crane requires all of your downtime to go into DPSing the boss, and some of the boss encounters don't allow you for that, like Mega Torque, which in second phase just goes up in the end. There's no one to attack, so due to convenience and due to the mana gains, Mana Tea has become the most popular talent here. In tier 60, Ring of Peace, there's no question, one of the most versatile talents in the game. Tier 75, if you're raiding, you'll probably be using Diffuse Magic, because it reduces the magic that you take, which is the primary source of damage that is happening to raid members in Battle of Dazar'alor, and it gives you a 1.5 minute cooldown. If you're uncertain about the type of damages you're going to be taking, Dampen Harm is a very valid choice. It reduces all the damage that you take, but it's a 2-minute cooldown. If you're raiding, Diffuse Magic is probably going to be a safe choice. If you're doing 5-mans, Dampen Harm is probably going to be what you're going to go with. Now in tier 90, without a doubt, Jade Serpent Statue has been one of the most popular and the strongest talents for Mistweavers in tier 90. It is a very mana efficient spell. You just cast it and you make sure that you cast Soothing Mist on somebody, and all of a sudden your statue is going to replicate that and cast it for a specific duration. It is not an infinite duration, and having a weak aura right here, you can see it, is quite important, because it will drop off. If you should try and maintain 100% uptime of this channeling on priority targets such tanks or DPS. Keep in mind that if you do end up healing a DPS who has a massive debuff, you cast like Soothing Mist on them and the debuff falls off, don't forget to cast Soothing Mist on your tanks and have your Jade Serpent Statue healing the tank, because if your statue is healing somebody who doesn't need any healing, it's going to provide too much overhealing. But overall, on my logs, it provides anywhere between 5 to 10% of healing, which is extremely mana efficient. Now there are a couple of talents that are also quite viable, like for example, Refreshing Jade Wind is situationally great. I use it on Opulence because I take the Shadow Gem. I need to apply Shadow Touch debuff on everybody. Everybody's quite stacked, so I just use Refreshing Jade Wind and everybody gets this debuff, and it's quite easy to maintain. So, and on specific situations like where there's a lot of burst healing required, then you might have to move quite a lot. You might not be able to hard cast Vivifies that much. You can use Refreshing Jade Wind, for example, Blockade, Ship Part, where there's a lot of movement. On the Mythic encounter, I have to move a lot. I end up using this talent to help out with the healing, with the passive healing, and it does quite a lot of healing. The downside of this talent is that it costs quite a lot of mana. You will be probably using this instead of using Vivifies, or at least if you do use this, and if you use Vivifies, your mana is going to be stretched quite a bit. Your stat priority might change a little bit because you might be casting Refreshing Jade Wind more than your Vivify, so all of a sudden your mastery might be a little bit lower. So you have to keep, if you really want to min-max it to the max, you might want to check out your stat priority when using the specific talent. But like I mentioned, you don't have to worry about this because Jade Serpent Statue is probably going to be used in 90% of the content out there, and it's an extremely easy to use talent. In tier 100, no debate here, I'm just going to say it, nothing's going to beat Upwelling. Upwelling's far too strong. Essence Font is your #1 healing ability in any raid situation. It should be the #1 healing ability by quite a large margin, and Upwelling is far too strong to never be used. 100% of the time in raid encounters, you will be using Upwelling. Another question they get asked a lot is Fist Weaving viable? And if you mean Fist Weaving with Rising Mist, that is not viable right now. Rising Mist is not strong enough to replace Upwelling. I said this a lot of times. I am quite sad that Blizzard did not use this opportunity to provide Mistweavers with two different viable builds. Two very different viable builds. They should buff Rising Mist to kind of allow Fist Weaving to be viable. But Upwelling is far too strong. But another note on Fist Weaving, even though Rising Mist is not viable, you should still be doing damage on your downtime as a Mistweaver Monk, especially with the fact that you do provide that 5% physical damage taken on the targets or enemies that you hit. So DPS is very important as a healer no matter what, raid or 5-mans. So this is one of the talent builds for raid situations. Now, if we look at some of the 5-man talent builds that are really popular for Mistweaver, that would be something along the lines of what I have on the screen right now. And that involves Mist Wraps and Life Cycles, because both of these talents can synergize really well to provide the best single target healing in the game for Mistweavers, with a combo of Soothing Mist into Enveloping Mist into Vivifies, and that is going to top anybody from a tank to the DPS from 10% to a full in very short period of time. No other healer is capable of this sort of single target healing in the game, and Mist Wraps and Life Cycles can really work well together. And for 5-mans, I would definitely choose this combo for majority of the content out there. Tiger Slowst, again, for 5-mans, provides you that utility to give speed boost to your tank, especially for immobile tanks and things like that. Ring of Peace, the most versatile talent, utility talent in the game out there, can be extremely strong for certain situations. Should probably always pick that. Dampen Harm, because you're not aware of whether it's going to be magical or physical damage. If you really know what kind of damage is going to happen and you're 100% sure it's going to be magical, Diffuse Magic is going to be really strong. Again, Jade Serpent Statue, very strong in 5-mans, provides a lot of healing for very mana efficient as well, and mana efficiency can play a big part, and we'll talk about that later on. But overall, you cannot go wrong with Jade Serpent Statue in 5-mans, and Focus Thunder for 5-mans, because your Essence Font is not that big of a deal in 5-man situations. We'll talk about the Essence Font Hot and the double mastery proc later on, which is very important. But overall, the healing summary or healing breakdown by spells for 5-mans, it would look something like your Vivify or your Mastery Gust of Mists is going to be #1 or #2 for majority of 5-man content out there. Now, it's going to change depending what it's going to be, like Grievous or Bursting or Quaking and things like that. But majority of the time, Vivify and your Mastery, which you don't have to worry about, it's going to proc by itself, are going to be your #1 healing spells in 5-man content, and Focus Thunder is going to help out with that as well. It's very versatile. Keep in mind that if you do have the Secret Infusion Azerite trait, which is going to proc when you use Thunder Focus T, with Thunder Focus or with Focus Thunder, you will have 2 procs of Thunder Focus T, but it is not going to proc Secret Infusion twice. It is only going to proc it once, so it does not make Secret Infusion like double as good in 5-man content. It's still the same kind of trait, the same kind of value for it, so keep that in mind. Now, if you look at the stat priority for a Mistweaver, and a lot of people have asked me about this because it is relatively different from 5-mans to raid scenarios. First, we'll talk about raid scenario stat priority, and to some extent, intellect is going to be your #1 stat until a certain point, because I am 410 item level, and for me, my secondary stats are becoming stronger than intellect. So it's safe to say that 400 plus item level, your secondary stats might become better than your intellect, and we'll see how that's going to go in the future. But generally speaking, if you're a new player, if you don't have that high of item level, intellect is going to be your #1 stat. In raiding situations, this is my stat priority, and this is going to be a very generic stat priority for new players coming into raid, and that's going to be crit versatility, relatively equal, but I will say like crit versatility, mastery, haste. And you cannot go wrong with crit versatility. They buff all your heals. They're relatively very strong stats. You just cannot go wrong with them in any situation. Crit verse very strong. Mastery to some extent can be a very good stat on certain fights where you're proccing your double mastery quite a lot, where you're casting a lot of Vivifies, where you're playing your Mistweaver really, really well, or if there is a lot of tank healing and you're spending a lot of the time into enveloping Mistvivify bonus, and you're proccing a mastery a lot, mastery can be as good as crit or versatility. It can be as good. If I look at and this is a personal note, might not going to affect you personally, but for me, my stat priority for a lot of the content is crit versatility very close to each other. Mastery on certain fights is as good as crit versatility, but on a lot of the fights, it's a little bit less. It's not as good as crit or verse. So that's why I do this ranking right now of crit versus mastery and then haste. Haste is substantially lower than any of the stats that I mentioned before. Haste is really not that great of a stat for a raiding Mistweaver, and I actively avoid getting anything to do with haste. So if I get a certain piece which has a lot of haste, if I get a ring that has a lot of haste, I consider using a lower item level ring, especially ring because they don't give you intellect, with like crit versatility, crit mastery, versatility mastery kind of build. So haste is really not a good stat, and it's by far the lowest, or by far a stat that you kind of want to avoid for raiding Mistweaver. Keep that in mind. Now for Firemans, it's a lot different, and in Firemans, a lot of the stats become kind of equal, to be honest. Haste becomes a lot more desirable because when I talk about haste, haste has a lot of different association with mana consumption, and in Firemans situations, you should be drinking mana drinks, or you should be drinking sugar-crusted fish feast, which can give you full mana in a couple of seconds. So all of a sudden, having more haste is not going to be that big of a deal because mana is not an issue. If you are looking for pure healing throughput, if you just want to increase your healing by a lot, mastery is probably going to be your strongest stat in 5-man dungeons because you're going to be proccing your mastery quite a lot. It is a very strong healing stat, but keep in mind that if you do want to get, extra DPS, and DPS as a healer is quite important, mastery provides 0 towards your DPS. So all of a sudden getting a solid balance between all the stats can be quite important. Keep in mind that if you do end up stacking like mastery to a crazy amount, the way that secondary stats work is that, or actually all the stats work, the more of that stat you have, the less strong it becomes. Getting a balance is always the most beneficial, so that's why a lot of people will tell you, just go highest item level. Go highest item level gear. Now, another thing that I wanted to say for the people who are doing really, really high keys, and we're talking about 18s, 17s, 19s and things like that, especially Tyrannical Grievous this week, mana can be a definite issue, and a lot of healers out there start to kind of drop a lot of their haste because they don't care about having faster heals, because they want to have strong, efficient heals. Because in really high tyrannical keys where the bosses will last 4 to 5 minutes, Grievous is there, you don't really care about the faster heal. You want to have a really strong, powerful heal, and having a lot of mastery, having a lot of crit, having a lot of versatility will give you that. But that is only, like I mentioned before, big disclaimer, that is only going to affect people who are genuinely running out of mana on fights where you can't get out of combat. So boss fights, tyrannical weeks, like 18 plus keys, 4 or 5 minute boss encounters. So keep that in mind. This is going to be for a very niche set of players. Outside of that, like I mentioned before, a lot of secondary stats are very strong for Mistweavers in 5-man content. Now, if we look at for Azerite gear can differ from 5-mans to raids. If we look at Battle of Dazar'alor, if we look at the specific Azerite gears that it provides, or Azerite traits that it provides, number one raid trait that you can get is Bonded Souls. Bonded Souls is absolutely insane right now. It can provide so much free healing. Keep in mind that when it procs every 5 seconds, you and your nearest ally are both healed. So sometimes your nearest ally is going to be full HP and it's going to overheal. And if you get 2 Bonded Souls or 3 Bonded Souls, this might lead to a lot of overhealing. But for certain fights where there's constant AoE healing needed, this is going to be very, very strong. But overall, this does stack. But the more traits you get, it might lead to more overhealing. So you need to check your own logs, check the overhealing the Bonded Souls does. Bonded Souls, at least one trait, is going to be biz no matter what for every single healer out there, even though it does give you haste, and haste is arguably not a good secondary stat for Mistweaver monks in raid encounters. The healing that it provides is absolutely insane. It's really, really strong. Fights with this continuous AU damage, blockade, ship part, Jaina. I'm sure stacking 1, 2, 3 Bonded Souls is not that bad of a deal because it's constantly going to be healing people. But getting at least one is probably mandatory for you. In terms of specific Azerite traits for a Mistweaver monk in raiding situations, the best one is going to be Font of Life. Keep in mind the secondary portion that reduces the cooldown of Thunder Focus Tea does not stack, but the Essence Font portion does stack. So getting one is going to give you the maximum potential. Getting a second one is going to be pretty strong, but not as strong as getting at least one of these. And outside of that, you probably will have to choose, because if you are raiding, you won't have that many options and you might not get the most best pieces. You probably will have to choose between Secret Infusion or another Azerite trait that's very populated in Azerite gear, Uplifted Spirits. Both of them are quite good in, or quite decent in raid encounters. Uplifted Spirit is far better in 5-man encounters, so I end up, if you have an option of getting Uplifted Spirit of Secret Infusion, I usually tend to go with Uplifted Spirits because I do 5-mans in raid content and I try to get the best of both worlds because I don't want to reforge my gear all the time. So Uplifted Spirit is still pretty decent in raids, amazing in 5-mans. Secret Infusion is pretty decent in raids and pretty decent in 5-mans. So you have to consider that. In terms of generic Azerite traits that outside of the raid, Swirling Sands, Brightborn Infusion are really, really strong. They both give you Critical Strike. Critical Strike is great for a raiding Mistweaver. Unfortunately, to get these, you need to spend Titan Residuum, you need to buy specific gear, you need to have a chance of getting it, so the chances of you getting these specific traits are quite low. So keep that in mind. If you're looking for 5-man specific traits, like I mentioned before, again, Bonded Souls is still very strong. I should have mentioned Treacherous Coven as well. From raiding situations and 5-mans, Treacherous Coven is still a very, very strong stat. It does increase the damage that you take when you're below 20% HP, but that does not stack. So if you do have like 3 Treacherous Coven, it does not mean that you're going to be taking tons of extra damage below 20%. It does not stack. So Treacherous Coven, Bonded Souls are just very good Azerite traits for raids and 5-mans. Font of Life, amazing trait specifically for raids for Mistweaver. And Uplifted Spirits is great for 5-mans for a Mistweaver. Keep in mind that for 5-man content there is a lot of Azerite traits that proc or give you mastery, which also can be very strong inside the pack. Trade wins, they're also very, very good choices because mastery again is your best 5-man throughput stat. In terms of the gear, for a mythic progression, I get this asked a lot, and this is gonna go into the gameplay portion of Mistweaver monks. Mana consumption as a Mistweaver monk. How can I reduce the amount of mana that I use? I'm running out of mana, and this is the number one complaint I get about Mistweaver monks. And Mistweaver monks to some extent can be regarded as the easiest healers to get out of mana. If you're playing any, like I play all the healer specs out there, and when I play other healers, I do envy how much extra filler abilities I can use as say like a Holy Priest and things like that. Considering when I compare it to a Mistweaver who will spam Vivifies for a bit too much and run out of mana like that. And that can happen a lot of the time. So I do recommend a lot of the Mistweavers to go with the Eternal Alchemy Stone, which is going to give you versatility. Again, one of the best stats. It's going to give you an int proc. The intellect proc is whatever. I'm not a huge fan of intellect procs for healers anyways. But it's also going to increase the effect of healing and mana potions on the wearer by 40%. So if you couple this Alchemy Stone with your potion of replenishment. You're going to be sitting down and you're going to be drinking this for 10 seconds. But the amount of mana this is going to give you, coupled with the alchemist stone, is going to be insane. It's going to be really strong for mythic progression, where mana is going to be an issue, and I highly recommend everyone to use this if you're having mana issues as a Mistweaver. If you don't have this, I highly recommend you to be very conservative on your Vivify spam, to be conservative or be aware of the fact of how do I proc double masteries, because mastery procking or getting the most use out of mastery is going to provide more healing, and therefore it's also going to reduce the amount of heals that you need to put out on the raid because it's giving you more healing. So therefore it might save you mana. So we're going to be looking at how you save or how you proc your mastery the most. So number one thing, Essence Font, you basically cast this when there's a lot of raid damage. Now there's been numbers throwing around, things like you cast Essence Font when there's 6 targets taking damage, when there's 7 targets taking damage, and there's been a lot of thought, or there's been a lot of talk about how many targets need to take damage. If there's a lot of raid damage happening, you cast Essence Font. You are using Upwelling, you won't, in raid situations, you won't be delaying your Essence Font cast. If there is going to be continuous AoE damage happening all the time, and I would normally use Essence Font during this portion of the fight, I will use it again, no matter whether I have Upwelling or not, because you do not want to delay your Essence Font, your best healing ability, during really heavy AoE situations. Now keep that in mind, because a lot of the time ask me, do I need to hold my Upwelling, or do I need to hold my Essence Font with Upwelling? Do I need to wait for it? Again, if there's AoE damage happening, if you would normally use your Essence Font, just use your Essence Font. Keep in mind that a lot of the fights in Battle of Dazar'alor really work well with Upwelling, because there's a lot of damage. Let's say there's burst damage happening every 20 seconds, 30 seconds, every 40 seconds, which means that you do end up having a very strong Essence Font with Upwelling either way. So keep that in mind. Second thing, your mastery procs. So any of the healing abilities that you use, Renewing Mist, Vivify, Enveloping Mist, Soothing Mist has a chance to proc mastery as well. There is going to be an additional heal happening. So for example, if I cast Renewing Mist on myself, you will notice that Renewing Mist is going to heal, and there's going to be a mastery proc. This is a mastery proc. So this is a free healing that's happening. It's going to be a flat amount based on how much mastery you have. So it did this amount of healing for Renewing Mist. It'll do the same amount of healing when I cast Vivify. It'll do the same amount of healing when I cast Enveloping Mist. So mastery is free healing. It has a special interaction with Essence Font. Essence Font Hot. So if you cast Essence Font, you'll notice that there's going to be a hot targeted on you. I have this hot on myself. So what happens now is that if I cast any of the healing abilities, let's say I cast Vivify, there's going to be a double mastery proc. As you can see, 8,300 double. So casting your abilities or heals on people who have your Essence Font hot on them is going to provide additional healing. Making sure your grid, any of the health frames are showing this hot is vital. Another thing, the way that Vivify and Renewing Mist works is that when you cast Vivify on somebody, it's going to splash heal, or it's going to heal the people who have Renewing Mist on them. So every time you're casting Vivify, you have to consider a couple of things. I'm about to cast Vivify. I need to see, okay, I have 2 Renewing Mists. I need to make sure that my Renewing Mists are all out. Okay, my Renewing Mist is out. Second thing, does this target have Essence Font hot on them? Which is going to proc my double master as well. Okay, it does have it, and I can cast my Vivify. And now my Vivify is going to splash heal onto Renewing Mist targets. My Vivify is going to double proc mastery because of the Essence Font hot, and you're maximizing your healing to a very high extent. Now, keep in mind that there is a difference between maximizing healing and saving lives. If there's someone who's 10% HP, you don't have your Renewing Mist outs, that person doesn't have your Essence Font hot on them, you're still going to heal them, you're still going to try and save their lives, because at the end of the day, maximizing your HPS and saving someone alive, one is more important than the other in certain situations. But if you have a generic raid damage happening, let's say Gronk is a good example, and there's a video of me doing some of the healing, making sure your Renewing Mist is out, which basically means you're just using a cooldown. you can just use your Renewing Mist on cooldown on anybody, because Renewing Mist is a smart heal that's going to jump from target to target when they reach full HP. So there's very little thought into using Renewing Mist. Just use it on cooldown, make sure you have all the charges used. Try and get the people with Essence Font hot on them when you cast Vivify. If they don't have it, it's fine. When Thunder Focus Tea procs, or sorry, when you have Thunder Focus Tea available, you can generally use this on two things in raiding situations, and that is going to be either Vivify, which is going to cost no mana, which is very strong for progression, because a lot of the Mistweavers have issues with mana, and having a free Vivify is going to be very strong. Also because the way that Secret Infusion works, it kind of promotes Vivify usage, because after using Thunder Focus Tea, if you use Vivify, it's going to give you Mastery, which is going to be very strong again. Another usage of Thunder Focus Tea is using Renewing Mist, and if you use Thunder Focus Tea into Renewing Mist, it's going to make your Renewing Mist longer. Now again, if you use Secret Infusion Azerite trait, you will notice that you will only get haste after using Renewing Mist. So it's not that good of a bonus for a Mistweaver to get haste bonus outside. Like you could use Vivify and get Mastery. So it really depends, but the general consensus, without using the Secret Infusion Azerite trait, the general consensus would have been Thunder Focus Tea into Renewing Mist if you want to get extra HPS and you won't be struggling with mana, or Thunder Focus Tea into Vivify for free Vivify if you have mana issues and you want to conserve for progression mainly. In 5-man situations, Thunder Focus Tea is far more versatile. Don't be afraid to use it on Enveloping Mist. Don't be afraid on using it on Rising Sun Kick and things like that. It is based on the situation that you need. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is hard casting Enveloping Mist, hard casting Vivifies, or should I be using Soothing Mist into Vivify all the time because it gives me an instant cast? And the answer is basically no, because of how global cooldowns work. You have to remember that every spell has an associated 1.5 second global cooldown. Soothing Mist is a special spell that only has a 0.5 second global cooldown associated with it. But the way that it works is that if a target that is going to take continuous healing, and it's mainly going to mean tank, you probably will want to cast Soothing Mist into Vivify, because you'll still want to heal them with Soothing Mist. You might want to drop in Enveloping Mist afterwards. You're not sure where they're going to dip, go up or down or whatever. You're not sure. If a target is only going to need like one Vivify, and you know that you're going to swap a target to, you're going to swap to a next target that's going to need Vivify, just cast Vivify by itself. The way the global cooldowns work, it's going to be for you more beneficial to just jump from target to target with Vivifies. But like I mentioned, if you're not sure whether the target is going to take more damage, it is safe to cast Soothing Mist into Vivify, maybe cast Enveloping Mist later on down the line and things like that. Now, there is one general rule. If you want to cast Enveloping Mist on somebody, it is always recommended to never hard cast Enveloping Mist. And by hard casting, I mean you should never do this. You should always try, let's say someone needs a Enveloping Mist on them, you should always go Soothing Mist into Enveloping Mist, because Enveloping Mist cast time is quite long, and the global cooldown makes it worth casting Soothing Mist into Enveloping Mist. So these are some of the generic tips for playing Mistweaver Monk in raid situations. For 5-mans, it's going to be a little bit different. You will be doing the same kind of mastery procs. Like if you need high AoE healing, you will be casting Essence Font. You want to make sure that you have the Essence Font hot on the people, and you will try make sure that, again, the same kind of deal. If I'm casting my Vivify, do I have my Renewing Mist out? Do I have Essence Font hot on the person? And if I do, I'm doing the max healing that I can do. I'm proccing double mastery. There's going to be healing on the Renewing Mist targets and things like that. So the same kind of deal applies to 5-man situations. But in 5-man situations, you'll probably be using a combination of Soothing Mist, Enveloping Mist into Vivify far more often, because you'll be running with talent build of Mist Wraps and Life Cycles. And that works really, really well. So this has been a basic overview of Mistweaver Monk healing in raids and 5-mans. I know this ended up being quite a long video. I do really want to hear your opinion on this guide. I really want to hear your opinion if I missed out on something, if you feel some talents are more viable. How is your stat priority for your raiding monk and things like that. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoy the content, please do subscribe. It really helps out the channel a lot. I do want to give a shout out to recent guides being, or at least recent simulation tools being applied on Questionably Epic website, which allows you to compare your Azerite gear. please do check it out. I'll keep a link in the description below. It is an amazing site which lets you compare which Azerite gear you should be using for 5-mans and raids and things like that. It is an amazing work by one of the guys, Volk. Again, thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, please do subscribe, and I'll see you in my next guide.